You have found Messy in the Middle with Jeanie. I am Jeanie, and I am middle-aged, middle income, middle America, and I feel like life is a real mess, and the last couple of weeks have been a testament to that. I ended up leaving my previous employment and starting a new job, which actually is kind of a job that I had before, only with a little extra kick. So, um, I am currently in my kind of observation phase. I have taken on a management position at a salon, and um, I have worked at this salon before, and I was a manager at the salon before. Um, but because of all of the what was happening with Isaac and where we were at the time, it was in my best interest at that time to move to the position that I just left. And so I was there for a little over 4 years and in kind of a couple of different positions there, climbing the ladder, as it were. And now I am in a new position where I am um, doing, ultimately, I'll be doing a very similar um, the requirements will be very similar for me to what my previous job was. I'll be training, I'll be assisting um, my uh, the stylist in the salon with kind of improving skills and in the realm of customer service. And that's kind of the thing that I have done the most through the years is customer service related jobs. I have um, I've had a lot of different jobs. And one of the things when I was brainstorming about possibilities of what to talk about, one of the things that I thought about was the various jobs that I've had. And so I went ahead and made a list of uh, what is what are some of the jobs that I had, and I'm pulling up that list right now. That's why my eyes are all over the place. I'm pulling up that list right now because I feel like, um, yeah, I don't want to forget anything. So, um, I have, when I was pretty young, um, I had left the Marine Corps. Um, I, let's see, how much have we talked about? I'm not, I think I've mentioned that I was in the Marine Corps, but I haven't talked much about it, um, except for I think I did talk about my um, experience with military sexual trauma um, when I was in, and the fact that I'm doing therapy and getting mental health assistance for that. They have diagnosed me with PTSD, by the way, based on the symptoms that I exhibit and the conversations that I've had with her. So that is a thing um, that I didn't really acknowledge, I guess is the best word, for a really long time. Um, but apparently it is um, more of a thing than I wanted to admit. So I am working through all of that. Anyway, that is not why I left the Marine Corps. I left the Marine Corps because I got injured. I had bursitis in my hip, and as part of my experience while I was in the Marine Corps was I had this trauma. So before I went into the Marine Corps, I worked at a call center. I'm just going to tell you, cold calling people to ask them to purchase things. Now remember, this was 30 years ago, But so it was a little bit, the world was a little different, and the advertising was a little different. And, um, they would set us up to where we would call um, different areas of the country based on the time zone, and we would cold call them, and we would call um, their home phone right around dinner time, and we would offer. At the time, what I was selling was it was similar to an insurance plan. Um, anyway, no, just no. It was not for me. Um, I was not quite as confident as I am now, and being told no was very difficult for me. And I got told no, but hell no, and not very nicely, many, many times in each shift. So, um, yeah, I could hardly get anybody to stay on the phone with me, like ever. So, yeah, that was, wow. Anyway, left that job. I think I only worked there for maybe a couple of months. I, I just was not for me. But it didn't really matter because then I ended up leaving to join the Marine Corps, and I ended up being in um, leaving. That was in the summer before I left, and yeah, so it was it wasn't for me to do the call center thing, and then I left for the Marine Corps, and I really, really loved being in the Marine Corps. I did make it all the way through boot camp. I even went to my A school. I was doing really well, actually. Uh, in order to become air crewman, we had to go through a swim qualification. And I did that, and um, I passed through that without any issue. And then I was always scoring really high on my PT tests, and so I did really well as a Marine. It was really nice to just show up in my uniform every day and do what they asked me to do, and I really loved it. And then I went to um, I ended up going to Florida for air crewman school, and that's where I got injured. And so I was still in school, but I had graduated from my A school, and I was on to my onto air crewman school. Um, anyway, I really, really loved being in the Marine Corps. Um, Life was pretty simple, like I said. At the time, it was essentially peacetime, so there wasn't a whole lot of, um, I mean, there's always unrest in the world, but there wasn't anything that they were really preparing us for. And oh my gosh, you're going to end up being deployed to wherever. There wasn't a whole lot of that going on at that time. So um, it was in between the two Gulf Wars. And so the one had kind of settled down, and there wasn't a whole lot left going on. And the other one hadn't quite ramped up yet. Um, so anyway, my lifestyle in the Marine Corps was pretty simple. I put on my uniform. I went to work every day. I did what they told me. I went home. I took off my uniform and hung out with my friends. And, um, it was school's command. And when you're at a school's command, the rules are pretty stringent. And so, not obviously as stringent as boot camp, but they are pretty stringent. So, um, I was able to um, once I was injured, they put me at the headquarters building for the Marines on that base. And I ended up working for a couple of different gunnery sergeants while I was there. And anyway, so that there was that. I was in an office where um, the officer candidate school um, graduates were reporting to a major that was in that office, and the gunny that I worked for was working with that major to keep track of all these students that were in their um, first year or so of being in the Marine Corps, had just come out of college. So they're a few years older than me, but not much. But they were officers and they were new and they were, um, it was fun. Anyway, that's what I ended up doing. Um, Being injured in the Marine Corps is kind of what you would imagine. It's not really, um, well, it is frowned upon that you would be, well, again, this is 30 years ago, remember, so things are probably a little different now in the way they handle things, but the Marine Corps doesn't change a whole lot, so I can't imagine that it's changed too much from what it was, but um, I mean, obviously they take care of you, but you, I was going through and kind of trying to figure out what my options were, what was going on. It was my hip that was injured. What was going on? There were a lot of medical appointments, a lot of kind of evaluation, and really just trying to figure out what was happening with my hip. And um, by the time I ended up, they were still doing some of that when I was at the headquarters. Um, and still trying to figure things out. So, anyway, then after that is when, during that time is when the trauma happened. And if I can be honest, I kind of lost my will to fight to stay in. Um, I was not feeling supported, and it was the Marine Corps, and it was 30 years ago. So you can imagine how that might not have been supportive. um, a really supportive place to be for a girl who had just been through a sexual trauma. So that ended up um, taking the wind out of my sails, I guess, because I was really hoping that things could change or that I could um, heal up and go back. And at that, when after that happened, I really kind of just I lost the will to try to stay. Um, and I'm working through that actually currently in therapy. So we'll talk more about that later when it's not so fresh. And, because I buried that. I mean, that's 30 years of burying that shit like way deep. So, um, yeah, so that's just starting to come out. And I am I haven't really dealt with that yet. It's something that I've acknowledged, but I haven't really gotten to the place where we're dealing with that. So more on that later. I came home and I had only been in for a year and a half when I came home. And so I don't have any kind of, from that I wasn't in a war. I wasn't, there was, there was no, um, I was gone long enough to get used to being called by my last name. So I sometimes wouldn't answer when friends or whatever would say Jeanie. Um I wouldn't respond because I was so used to being called by my last name. And I was also easily frustrated with the world around me. because of it's different. It was very different here back at home than it was where I had been with Marines. And that's by design. It's not supposed to be the same, but it was a little bit of an adjustment period. I wouldn't say that it was traumatic or that it was, overly difficult. Um, and some people have been um, gone to the Marine Corps a lot less time than I have and have taken the readjustment period much harder than I did. Um, I One of the things that they preach to you in the Marines is to be adaptable, adapt and not overcome. They say that all the time. So if you are a person who has been in for a little while, you have that attitude. You just adapt and you overcome the obstacle and you do what you need to do. And I think sometimes if you haven't been in very long, and I wasn't in for very long, but if you haven't been in even as long as I was, maybe you didn't get that instilled into you. And so you, it would make it even harder for you because you really maybe didn't learn that yet. Anyway, point being, um, I know that there are people who left boot camp and in the middle of boot camp and never even finished boot camp for whatever reason, illness or injury or mental health problems, whatever. Um, and I know that I did get some letters from them. And I do know that they really, really struggled. And I think that part of that maybe is just not that training about being able to be super adaptable. So, um, anyway, so I'm looking over here at my list. How and why is something that I put on there. How and why the Marine Corps. So, when I was in high school, I had talked to the recruiters. I had really wanted to. I knew military was probably my best option. My grades were not good. I did not like school. I did not want to go to college. Absolutely had no desire to go to college. I'm just not a person that sits in a class very well. And I do get uh, bored and then irritated when they go over things repeatedly. And it's maddening to me. Once it's in my brain, I don't need to hear it over and over again. I mean, I like a refresher on something that I haven't done for a while, but if we literally just learned it, I don't need to do it 100 times. I get it. It's in there. I've got it. Thank you very much. So traditional school just does not work well for me. Trade school worked really well for me, and I found that through the years because it's so much more hands-on and more active learning, and I did a lot better with that. Um, then so anyway, so I came home or no, we were talking about me, how and why. So I knew I didn't want to do college, and my grades were not good. So I had to kind of decide my options were kind of limited. And I didn't want to just work a random job. And I had already done the call center thing. And well, I hadn't done the call center thing yet, but I did that later. And that sealed the deal for me. I knew I was making the right choice after the call center thing. But while I was still in high school, I had started talking to the recruiters when I was a sophomore. Well, if you have been in high school and you have ever talked to recruiters, they can't do anything with you until you are in your junior year because you have to be a certain age to be able to sign up. You have to be 18 or you have to have parental consent, and you have to be 17 and in your junior year to get that parental consent. And so, well, at least at the time, I don't, I think it's the same now because I have two kids and it was pretty much the same for them. So I think that's basically they can't do anything with you until it's your junior year. So most of the recruiters didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to waste their time. because I was still a sophomore and they figured I wasn't totally serious and I was just looking at, just talking to them for no reason. The Air Force recruiter and the Navy recruiter did not even give me the time of day. Like, absolutely did not speak to me at all. Like, not at all. The Marine Corps recruiter talked to me, answered my questions, was really, really great. And the only other recruiter that talked to me, Coast Guard didn't talk to me either. The only other recruiter that talked to me was the Army recruiter, and that's only because he wanted me to babysit his kids. So, all of that being said, I, when it came time for me to choose, um, I had, of course, the recruiters at that time would come in their dress blues to the school, and he looked pretty sharp. I'm not gonna lie about that. He looked good. Because who doesn't in Marine Corps dress blues? Let's just be honest. And then we had, he was always nice and he was always really helpful and he answered all of my questions. And I had friends that were going in around the same time as me, a couple years before me, and from 4-H and stuff like that. And I say friends, they were the closest thing I had to friends. They were people that I hung out with, and they were going in um, right around the same time. And so when we would all sit and talk, that he would include me in conversation, and he made me feel like it was important that I continue asking questions, and he was happy to answer anything. So anyway, so when it came time for me to choose, of course, the obvious choice was um, was the Marine Corps. So plus that's the best, right? I mean, the Marine Corps is the best. So duh. Also, I didn't have a really great track record making friends with girls. And I knew that if I went to a place, and I usually got along with the guys better, I like to hang out and work on cars and shoot guns and things. And so I had, I tended to be way more comfortable hanging out with guys anyway. So the Marine Corps, for a myriad of reasons, just was the best option for me for sure. And so told you how that went. I ended up coming home and just working odd jobs. I waited tables. I uh, worked at a sign company. I went back to school. I did go to school. I tried to do the whole like traditional school thing, and I went to um, over the years, I went to 2 semesters of community college, not at the same time and like not in succession. I went to 1 semester of um, community college. I went to through a welding course. Loved that. It was awesome. And that actually later on, I ended up being able to use that to get a job as a painter's assistant and a welder's helper assistant person at a sign company, which I really, really loved. It was a super fun job. Um, and so anyway, so the other semester of school was I took a couple of classes. So bad. Not for me. That sealed it for me. Um, so I decided if I was going to do anything, I needed to do like a trade school because I wasn't going to be able to do college. I ended up deciding that I was going to go to, at the time, there was a school here in Colorado called Colorado Aerotech. And I don't know if it's out there, but I was in one of their commercials. And so there is a possibility that it was a local commercial, and depending on where you are, there may be no chance that you will find it. But I was actually in a commercial for Colorado Aerotech. They wanted me in the commercial because I was one of the few girls that was in the school, and they wanted to recruit more women to come to the school. So myself and one of my instructors, who was also female, was in the commercial. And there was another girl who was in, I think there was another girl in there. Like it was very female heavy, the commercial was, because they really wanted women to come to school there. Anyway, point being, I was in a commercial for the school that I went to. I was studying, I was in the avionics program. And so I was learning how to do electronics stuff on airplanes, um, understanding, how circuits work and all of those things, and the different components of a like a motherboard for computers and things like that. What all those little things are. If you've ever seen the motherboard of a computer, all those little things that are attached to the green board. I know all of those and what they do. It's a weird skill. I don't use it. I've used it one time. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But anyway, so I have, um, so I went to school and I was studying avionics, which starts out with basic electronics and then builds into the avionics, the actual avionics portion. But you have to know electronics to understand then how that's applied for aviation. So I was in the electronics portion and I had signed up to do both the avionics and then also the airframe and power plant section. So the mechanical piece, because as you may recall, I went to helicopter mechanic school. Did I even say that? I think I said that. Anyway, I was in Memphis when I was in the Marine Corps, and I went to helicopter mechanic school, and I got my basic helicopter, whatever. I passed through my A school. So I decided since I couldn't be in the Marine Corps and do it, I would do it as a civilian. So I went to Colorado Aerotech and I was taking the avionics portion of school with the intent of going into airframe and power plant shortly thereafter so that I could be um, a helicopter mechanic as a civilian. That was my plan. Uh, while I was in school, I was almost finished with the first part of the avionics section of my training. And I, uh, my stepfather was in a car accident and he ended up passing. So he and I had a kind of a contentious relationship for reasons that I won't discuss. But my mom and my sister were really struggling. So I came home to be a support to them. And so I left school with the intent of going back kind of once the dust settled. Um, that didn't happen. So I had this certificate because I did complete the electronics portion because it was split up into four things. So you had electronics, avionics, airframe, power plant. And I had completed the electronics portion and ended up going to coming home and being home to support my mom and sister. Um, so I just am noticing that we are at about 30 minutes, 20, almost 29 minutes on this video. And as you may or may not know, depending on how many videos you've watched, I try to keep my videos around the 30-minute mark. So, and this seems like as good a place to stop as any. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And so we are because we're at this place where I left school and I came back home again. It's like a black hole, just keeps sucking me back in. It's true. And it has been my whole life. I'm very much intended to be in Northern Colorado, apparently. And so anyway, I ended up leaving school. I ended up coming home to be a support to my family, and I never did go back. So I did have the electronic certificate, and I was able to use that later to get myself a job. And anyway, so we will talk more about that as time goes on. And anyway, I thank you for listening. I hope you have a really great day. And I am sorry that I'm a day late on this video. I I've been trying to keep up, but as I said before, there's been kind of a little bit of a turmoil in my life, and I've been really struggling to get the videos done. So last week's video was weird and short, and I thought I broke my hand. I did not break my hand. P.S. I did not break my hand. I had just, it was, I had, but I think I told you last week I was using an auger bit on my drill, and the auger, it had caught a couple of times and had twisted. And I don't even think it was sprained. I think it was just really, really angry, because by the time my husband got here, and we realized that there were no urgent cares still open, I ended up just icing it really heavily and resting it. And a couple of days later, it was fine. So, but it was really swollen, and it's still a little bit swollen. Look, like it's still a little bit swollen here. So, um, I don't know. Both my hands are really puffy right now. Anyway, oh, never mind. Um, so, but it is still a little bit swollen, and it is still a little achy and sore. So I think that I don't know. I don't know what I did, but whatever. Point being, it's not broken. I never did go to urgent care because they were closed, and I wasn't going to the ER because I am very sensitive about that. And I feel like the ER is not a place to go unless you are bleeding profusely or you have like a bone sticking out or something. And I knew I wasn't there. So, that's not, it's just not, I have a hard time going. I'm sure people will, there's probably many of you out there that would argue the point that that's what the ER is for, is when you get injured and it's something, but really, and I'm fine, right? Like my hand's working. I mean, it's stiff, but it works and it's just fine. And so I didn't need to go to the ER. I didn't even need to go to urgent care. Totally fine. Anyway, I hope that you all have a great week, and I will talk to you again next week, and we can pick up where we left off in me coming home. And how did I use my electronic certificate? Cliffhanger. Right. Anyway, I hope you have a really great week. Take care. Bye.